go.
Awesome. Perfect.
All right. Awesome. All right. We'll just get right into it. Yeah. So, yeah, we're Tim and Tiff, and then we got married last year. So, you know, we're a pandemic married couple, I guess.
Wow.
So yeah, we'll just go into our careers, and if you guys have any questions, just feel free to stop us at any time and you can ask us. So I'll start off. So I work in the defense industry as a systems engineer. Products that my company or I've done in my career would be like the UCAS right here. It's an unmanned air vehicle that can take off and land on an aircraft carrier. And it's the first one to do so in the military that's unmanned. And then I've also worked on an unmanned helicopter, and also been working on the GPS 3F. So it's the satellites in space that allow you guys to have GPS data on your cell phones or any other GPS devices. And I have also worked on ballistic missiles. So what's it like being a systems engineer? So technically a systems engineer is someone who's multidisciplinary. So we're the ones who integrate the mechanical, electrical, software, aerospace, and other engineering disciplines. So we're kind of on what you would call a higher level perspective. So we see the system as a whole. So all the different subsystems, such as if you take a car, for example, like the engine would be a subsystem, the electrical components would be a subsystem, the aerodynamic design would be a subsystem. And as a systems engineer, we view the whole project as a whole. So we're the ones coming up with the different requirements for the system, how the different subsystems talk to each other, and stuff like that. So in my job, we get to design a lot of technology for future capabilities, such as the unmanned vehicle. You know, we're pushing boundaries. We're doing things that haven't been done before. And yeah, if you guys follow like military news and things like that, they're doing a lot of cool things. So it's cool to be a part of that. And someone else, Sophia, admit. Okay. And then for career progression, so in my field, you can either stay on the technical route or you can go into the managerial route. So for technical, you would be what's called like a subject matter expert. So let's say if I were a subject matter expert in electrical systems, so I could just go up that route and eventually be the head of design. And for the managerial, you would be more in charge of things like the project. So you would go into project management. You would have the whole team. You would do a lot of the scheduling, project management, dealing with the customer, and things like that. And some people don't like staying in the what you would call the prime contractor. So if you guys have heard of like Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Northrop, Raytheon, some people like to go the consulting route. So that's when you open up your own firm, and then you usually have a specialty that you're offering to these large companies. So these large companies will find smaller consulting firms for specialized skills. And so for how I got here, so growing up, I always enjoyed, you know, playing with electronics. And then since my dad was a software engineer, he always allowed me to have exposure into computers. So he actually taught me how to, you know, assemble my computer when I was in high school. So I know some of you are interested in that, but since that's more of like a hobby sort of thing, I can get more into it later if you have questions. But just doing hobbies like that from an early age allowed me to kind of grow interest in this field and just technology in general. So also in high school, I had a part-time job at Fry's Electronics. If you guys didn't know that, is an electronics store that recently closed. So they'll be closing all their stores. But for me, it allowed me to gain exposure into just different technologies and yeah, electronics in general.
Price is
So
closing?
yeah, Fry's is closing. They just announced, I think this past month, they're closing all their stores.
What?
So you can, yeah, you can go. Actually, I think they're all done, so I don't think you can go visit anymore. But yeah,
I don't think they
sad,
had them in Canada, so it's probably away when
yeah,
that happened. Ah.
sad news. But yeah, so in high school, even up to the times when I was applying for college, I had no idea what I wanted to do, no idea what I wanted to study. So I just asked my dad, and he told me, you know, study electrical engineering. And honestly, at that time, I had no idea what it was. I had no idea what it would entail, what I would be studying, what applications it would be used for. Um, and yeah, to be honest, college was difficult. You know, it's not an easy thing to study. um but yeah, I had no option. My dad was like, you're staying in engineering, you know, don't even think about switching. So I was like, okay. So yeah, I got through college, and then while in college I was able to get an internship at Northrop. So Northrop Grumman is the company that makes like the B-2 bomber, as shown in this picture. I don't know if you guys are familiar. Um, but yeah, so when I got the internship at Northrop, that was when I really gained a clear understanding of how things that I was learning in school would be applied to work. And it allowed the things that I would be studying in the future a lot more applicable. So I was able to realize how my classes were able to benefit me in my future work and career. And now that I'm done with, or now that I'm working full time, I'm currently pursuing a master's in systems architecting and engineering. And yeah, that's how I got to where I am today. And to look at like the salary of like someone in my field, typically you would start off at around, I think the entry wages have been going up since I've started. I think they're around 75,000 now. So coming out of college with a bachelor's in engineering, you could expect to see around 70 to 75,000 a year. And then after a couple years, you get a promotion. There's different scales. So typically after 2 years so you would get a promotion. So for a systems engineer 3, this is typically after around 5 years of experience. So you could typically be expecting around 119 as the median. And then when you get to more senior positions, systems engineer 5 is typically after around 15 years of experience. So you could see around 168,000. But this is just data online. I know friends who are, you know, a level 5 and they're making in the 200s. So yeah, it all varies from company to company and position. And because systems engineering is so broad, there are different specialties within it, and different specialties pay more. So, and this is just the technical route. You can still go up to a systems engineer 6, or you can go into management and things like that. So all the data is available online, so you guys can just go take a look for yourself. It's pretty close to what you'll expect to see. And then, so for me, in the defense industry, because we work closely with government, the government works on a schedule known as the 980. So every 2 weeks, you still work 40 hours every pay period, which is 2 weeks, but you only work 9 days out of those 2 weeks. So on Mondays to Thursdays, we work 9-hour days, and then we get every other Friday off, which is pretty nice. So you get a 3-day weekend every other Friday. And how I mentioned I was pursuing my master's, it's actually paid for by the company. So if you guys are interested in pursuing, a master's or a doctorate or anything like that, you should definitely look for companies that will reimburse your tuition. So that is a great benefit that they do offer, especially now that master's programs are really expensive. Each class right now that I'm taking is like $6,000. So you can only imagine how quickly it adds up.
Wow.
And then we'll get into a Tiff's portion.
I'm an intelligence analyst for the FBI. A question I get a lot is like, do I have a badge or a gun? And I don't, but I do have FBI creds. Some things that I do, so there's different kinds of roles for analysts in the FBI, but a big role is to investigate crimes with special agents. So I don't know how many of you guys have heard of or watched Criminal Minds, but it was one of my favorite shows growing up. Um, Even though the material is kind of like disturbing, but it's about FBI agents. And that's kind of like how our teams are set up in the FBI. So we usually have a big group of agents. And then the woman on the far right, Penelope Garcia, she's our analyst. And that's kind of like how we are too. So I usually am on a team with 9 or 10 special agents. And we have a bunch of investigations. And usually the investigations are for one particular kind of crime. So that can be healthcare fraud, it can be organized crime, it can be a national security thing. What are some other ones? There's gangs, terrorism, so all different kinds of crimes. But usually each squad specializes on one. We also do a lot of trainings. So the kinds of trainings that we do kind of just span the spectrum. So we have some that are more tactical. So sometimes the agents go out to firearms training and they also have to learn how to better search a house and how to clear a house. So sometimes as an analyst, I would go out and I would be a role player. So they would be the ones with the skills needed to get into the house and to clear the stairways and the different rooms, but I could also participate by being a person that was hiding in the room. We also do trainings for just our skills. So learning how to do better searches, better research, better writing. And our trainings aren't always in the office. Sometimes they can be in other states like Hawaii or Virginia. They can be with other agencies. So they can be with local law enforcement, state law enforcement, other intelligence community agencies like the DEA or the CIA, other agencies. And another role that analysts do or take is analyzing crime trends. So we look a lot at what the world or how the world is changing. So for example, with COVID-19, we've had to adapt, right? A lot of us have had to go online for certain things. We can't go out as much. Certain things are more valuable, like COVID vaccines or COVID tests. And in the same ways that we have to adapt, criminals also have to adapt too, because the way they were earning money before, that has to change too if the world is changing. So we look a lot at that too, which is helpful for allowing the agents and also other law enforcement agencies to know how to detect those kind of crimes, because criminals are actually really smart. Like sometimes I'm like working on a case and I'm like, if they just put all this brain power into something legal, like that would be so good for them. But like sometimes they're so complicated. So that's like something that we do. Another thing that analysts can do are extracurricular activities. There's different teams where you kind of take on additional responsibilities in addition to your normal day-to-day job. So for me, I'm on the crisis negotiation team. And that's, so the picture with a SWAT truck, so the crisis, oops, sorry. The crisis, oops, wait.
Here, I'll do it.
So the crisis negotiation team, oh, I don't need that. We usually help out with SWAT. So whenever they go out to an op, like an arrest or a search warrant, we have agents in the Bearcat and they call out the subject or whoever's in the house to come out. And then we help them figure out what things to talk to in the case of a barricade. So let's say they decide to take a hostage or decide to stay in the house. We do some research beforehand to figure out what we can talk to them about or what people we can have, like their family members or their friends, to help them come out safely. And some other pictures on the screen are just our logo, the puzzle, because solving crimes is truly like solving a jigsaw puzzle. Things are all over the place and you don't know what fits where. And then also the picture of the girl at the computer. My computer doesn't look that cool, but that's pretty much my day to day. I'm just in front of screens and just typing away. So how I got here, I was born and raised in Southern California, and I had a chance to either go to UCLA or go to Cornell in upstate New York. And so my mom pretty much told me that since I grew up in LA, it was a good chance to go out and explore the world. So I went there, and that's actually one of my favorite pictures because it was just like so foresty and so like wintry there. I mean, it was really cold, but it was also really fun to get to explore another part of the US and to also meet people from around the world. And that really kind of broadened my perspective on what was out there in the world. And there I studied bioengineering. So like Tim, I didn't really know what engineering was. I just knew that it was practical. And I knew that I liked math. I wasn't good at science, but I did enjoy some parts of biology. Like I thought it was really cool how like cells were made to interact, like the different organelles in the cell would work together. And I thought that was really cool. So I decided to study that. And then while I was at Cornell, I just joined a bunch of different clubs and teams. I'm trying to like figure out what exactly I was interested in, but also trying to build up my resume for going into a job after college. So the first thing that I was interested in were biosensors. So the most common type of biosensor is a pregnancy test. So it's usually some kind of device that allows you to detect certain things. So a pregnancy test will detect certain hormones that tell someone that they're pregnant. And that's what all those vials are showing. And then I went on a semester internship. So instead of doing one during the summer, I got to do one during the school year, and I went to New York City for that. And there I was part of a more mechanical engineering team. It was a startup, but it was under the Cornell's hospital. So we designed this device that helps in colonoscopies. So that part on the bottom left corner with the inflation device, that's something that me and two other people helped engineer. And then while I was in New York City, I also found this hackathon for that was related to the healthcare industry. So I was just curious, and there was probably like free food, or it was probably free. So I was just like, oh, why not? Like, just check it out. I had nothing better to do anyways. And so I met a lot of different people. I think the two on the left were masters and engineering students from Cornell. The one next to me on the left was a PhD MD student from Texas. Maybe the three on the right were all biology students. I think they're wanting to become doctors. So we had a good range of doctors, engineers, and I think even the person on the left was interested in business. So we just had a very diverse team, and it definitely wasn't as rigorous as a normal hackathon because we just didn't have as much CS or computer science ability. but it was cool to see how we could use health in a more tech savvy way. So then after that, when I went back to Cornell, I studied information science, which is more like web design, more like computer science light, I think of it as. And then I was going to accept an offer at Epic, which is a healthcare technology company in Wisconsin. It's kind of like healthcare Google. But while I was still in school, I got an offer from the FBI to become an analyst. So I decided to just skip Epic and go straight back to the FBI. Oh, and something I guess that was a big part of joining the FBI was after the internship in New York City, I got to do an internship at the FBI in LA. So I got to work on a team with special agents and analysts and basically be on the team, basically do the day-to-day job of what they do there. So some things that I like and don't like about the job. The thing that I like the most is definitely working for a greater mission. So in Quantico, we learned that the mission of the FBI is to uphold the Constitution and protect the American people. So I feel like it's cool to work for something other than just profit. I think when I was contemplating Epic and the FBI, Epic's motto was do good, have fun, make money. And do good really resonated with me. Have fun was okay, but if you know me, like I'm not like totally like wild or anything. So I was like, that's all right. And then make money, I was like, yeah, that's important, but I wouldn't make it like one of my primary motives for working in a job. So the FBI's is fidelity, bravery, integrity. And I thought for me, like it spoke to something bigger than just a job. And so it really attracted me to it. And then another reason I really like the job is it's fun and cool. It's not the same as the movies for sure, but it's just as fun and cool in different ways. And I also get to fight for justice, which is something that's really valuable to me. And I really enjoy the people there. For a lot of the special agents, it's their second or third career. It's something that they took a pay cut to do, but they are smart. They enjoy the work and they're pretty down to earth people. Some cons of the job are that it's limited to certain cities. So if you want to stay in LA, that's totally okay because we have a bunch of offices here. But if you want to move to a different city, that might be a problem. Sometimes there are odd hours because we do some operations at different times. So sometimes you'll have to work late at night or super early in the morning. But if you don't want to do that, I think you can avoid that. And there are some personal sacrifices that you have to make. So thankfully I met Tim after I joined the FBI because to become an analyst, you have to go to Quantico with the agents. So the agents do 5 months of training and the analysts do 3 months, but it's still 3 months in Virginia on a Marine base. So that's something that that your family or friends would have to understand. So what do we get in terms of our pay and benefits? So something else that I was considering while deciding between Epic and the FBI was the starting salary. So Epic's was about 60,000 and the starting salary for the FBI with just a bachelor's degree for this position specifically was about 40,000. And that was kind of discouraging, but something else that I also needed to look at was the promotion potential. So even though it started at 40,000, I knew that in a year I could get 60 and then 70, 80, 100, and then with a maximum of about 124. Like at least the scale is like kind of complicated, but basically like the ones highlighted in red are the salaries that I went off of. So even though it started a little lower, I knew that it was going to increase and I knew that increase was something that I could count on. So that's why I knew that even though the salary was lower than Epic's in the beginning, it would still maybe even out towards like the middle, even just after a couple of years of working. And something that's also great about working for the FBI is you get pension. So after you retire, you still get money. It's not just something that cuts off at the end. And you also get healthcare insurance, vacation and sick time off. I think the federal government's benefits are pretty comparable to the private sector. I mean, for like an 8 to 5 job, it's pretty good.
I guess I can start off with my takeaways and advice. So for me personally, I would encourage everyone to pursue something to study or their career goals in something practical. And I say that only because I know plenty of people who go to college and don't study something that will set them up with a job that would be a good financial investment. So, if you go to college, you're paying, I don't even know how much it is now. Education costs keep going up, but let's say like $20,000. You don't want to go to college for and spend 20 something $1,000 and end up with a degree that doesn't really get you a good job that will that will pay a decent amount. Um, and also going off of that, I don't think college is for everyone. Not everyone, likes studying or is good at studying. And there are plenty of good jobs that don't require college degrees, such as plumbers, electricians, technicians. There's always trade schools that can be that can set you up for very good careers. And I know people who went to college for things that couldn't get them jobs, and then they end up going to trade school anyways. So I think it's always better to think about that before you apply to college and give up 4 years of your life plus tuition costs, which can be a lot. And then I also encourage people who are younger to find internships or jobs, because I feel like that is where I gained the most exposure and experience to things that I wanted to do. I didn't know what working in the real world would look like. And it wasn't until I started interning or even the little jobs that I had in high school that really shaped my goals and interests. So yeah, especially when you guys get to college, you guys should always be looking for internships in between the school year. So during the summer, because that can not only like develop your interests, but it can also set you up with a future job. Because for me, I interned at Northrop Grumman and they offered me a position when I graduated. So it kind of took that pressure off of having to just start fresh and finding that first job right out of college. And especially in engineering, internships can pay well too. I know back in the day, yeah, it was 10 years ago, but yeah, you get paid $25 an hour. And I've heard that it's up to $30 an hour now just for internships. So if you're only looking at the financial aspect of it, it's pretty good as well. And then, yeah, so like I mentioned, engineering wasn't easy. But the way that I see it is, those 4 years, you really just put in work to set yourself up for the future. Because I feel like it's better to work hard in those 4 years and not really have to worry about how you're going to pay for food or shelter in the future. How you're able to have a solid and stable career with that hard work that you put in college. So some may say other majors would be easier, but well, I would say that it's not guaranteed that they're going to have a stable career in the future that would be able to sustain them with the lifestyle that they want. And yeah, like people nowadays want to, study something that they're passionate about, which might not be practical. Like if I didn't follow my dad's advice and I just, signed up for whatever major I wanted to, I'd probably do something like photography. Yeah, to be honest, I would have studied photography in college, but I know from what I know now, it's really hit or miss with the kind of job that you'll be able to find in the future. And a lot of them, they aren't stable, and they're having to jump from job to job. So yeah, I guess for my advice to you guys would be study something practical. Definitely do the research on the different majors. Like for example, you don't know what electrical engineering does, but it's actually a really broad field, because if you study electrical engineering, you can go into power utility. So you can work for, SoCal Gas and Electric or PG&E or something like that. You can go into programming. A lot of double E's go into programming. You can go into, communications in the sense of like radar, or or like radio frequencies and how radio signals get broadcasted. Or you can even go into artificial intelligence, like a lot of search engines like Google, Facebook, they all use artificial intelligence. So really do your research on the field, because it's not always exactly what you think it might be. Yeah, people think, electrical engineering, you go and assemble computers, but that's not what you do. So definitely do your research, and also look at labor statistics to see how many open jobs there are in the future. So you want to go into something that's growing and not a field that's shrinking. So, and also, I also encourage like a STEM degree. So something in science, technology, engineering, or math, because those degrees can also set you up for other things that you want to go into. There are a lot of lawyers, a lot of doctors, a lot of CEOs, business people who studied engineering as their undergrad, because a lot of these grad schools, they like to find someone who's good at problem solving, someone who's resourceful, able to, yeah, figure things out. So yeah, studying in STEM definitely sets you up for, in my opinion, anything that you want to do.
Yeah, going off of that, Tim stole my line, but I was gonna say pursue education or career in something you're interested in, not passionate about. So I worked at our school's engineering advising office, and the advisors would always say like, oh, these students, they want to study something they're passionate about, but it's just not like realistic. So in high school, I think if I wanted to study something that I was passionate about, it would have been English or criminology. But because I liked math enough to study engineering, I was able to have that critical skill that even the FBI is looking for. So I have coworkers who studied criminology, and from the FBI's perspective, you would expect that someone who studied criminology is going to have much more relevant skills for working there than someone who studied engineering. But actually, like Tim said, like engineers develop critical thinking skills, problem solving skills, and have the ability to take something very complicated and communicate it in a more cohesive way. And because of that, that adds to your strengths. So engineering is something that's very versatile. Like I am an example of someone who studied engineering but didn't become an engineer. And it's actually a very good major to set you up for the future. And another piece of advice I would give is to just experience a lot of things. Like in college, I'm so grateful for the chance to go to different clubs, do just a bunch of random different things, because you never know who you're going to meet and the kind of stuff that you're going to be exposed to that might spur a certain interest or introduce you to a field that you've never heard about. And one last piece of advice is that you can fail, but you should pick yourself back up. So I almost switched majors my first semester in college because I got a D on my first physics quiz, and something that's really important to engineering is physics. And I was like so like devastated, but going to the TA and just doing a lot of homework problems, like I was able to pick that grade back up. And failure shows you that you know, it's kind of humbling because you realize like there are things in this world that are going to stump us, but if you're able to pick yourself back up, you learn how to persevere, and you learn like in the future when you have new challenges that because you were able to overcome previous ones that you can like overcome that hurdle.
Yeah, and yeah, I know teacher Christine did say that I would talk about computers, but I guess I didn't really go into it. But I can provide you guys with kind of, I guess, the basics and fundamentals if you guys are interested. You know, just the different components that you have to select, like the processor, the graphics card, hard drive, memory, and motherboard, things like that. So if that is something that you guys are interested, it's something I could do. And yeah, at least for me, you guys can always ask teacher Christine for my info, and then you can always email me with questions that you have for that.
Do you
But
guys
yeah,
mind stopping the screen share so we can open it up for questions? Was that your last slide?
yeah, that was our last slide.
Okay, so there is a question from Jacob. Did you get paid for building PCs as a hobby? So I think that's more his question.
So I personally didn't. I never tried to sell any of my builds, but I know people do try and do that. I mean, if you read like Dell Computers, if you read his backstory, that is how they started. So I think you know, there is potential to get paid for it, but I know a lot of people try doing that. You know, you try selling it on Craigslist, and yeah, for me, I just never saw it as a way to sustain myself financially. Um, but yeah, I know people that try and do that, but it's probably a very saturated field, and hard to really um, make a living off of. If is that what you're wondering, Jacob?
Yeah, you answered it. You answered it good.
Okay.
Any other questions for either Tiff or Tim? That was a lot, and a lot of really good advice. Ellie?
In the FBI, is it kind of like unsettling to like work on like crime cases and stuff? Because I get kind of like squirmish.
Yeah, there are certainly crimes that make me more squirmish, like the graphic ones, like gangs. The stuff they do is pretty like hard for me to read. But I work a lot on white collar, so it's a lot of like financial crimes, and those thankfully are not as squeamish. They're kind of just like yeah, they're like the opposite of squeamish. They can be like sometimes dry to read until you like think about the scheme. Yeah.
I guess one more thing I want to add is like we both have, I mean, is that okay? But basically, yeah. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, we both have to go through background checks for our jobs, and you know, they look into everything. They look into you know, even like car violations such as tickets. So I would advise, you know, when you guys are young, you know, be careful with every single decision that you make, because it can affect your future career, especially ones where you do need a clearance for, because they will they even ask your childhood friends like, oh, does this person have a drinking problem, stuff like that. So yeah, just my advice is remember that all your actions and decisions now can affect your future.
Yeah, I had a friend who wanted to be in the FBI, but they investigated her family, and because her brother was in a gang, she was not accepted. And it
Oh.
was like her dream, what her childhood dream, but because of her family affiliation to gangs, they didn't accept her.
Yeah. Any other questions?
What did you have to get clearance for, Tiff, before sharing? What were they concerned about that you
Um,
might share?
oh, we get the same kind of background checks. So like usually drug use, whether you have integrity. So they'll ask friends like, oh, does this person like lie? Stuff like that.
I think she was asking to share here
Share here. What do you mean?
with the class. Remember how you had to check
Check.
To share about your job.
here with
Oh, what did I have to check? Oh, I was just making sure that or just that it was okay to share. I feel like anytime we have to talk about our jobs with the public, usually they just want to know beforehand.
Mhm.
Yeah, just with like sensitive work, like we're not even supposed to wear our badges outside of work. So they don't want the general public to know where you work and things like that. So it is more sensitive. And a lot of times like you can't even talk about what you work on. So of course we have to be like very general um yeah, we
Yeah.
can't really be detailed. So
Yeah, but the FBI does have a good public outreach program. There's like a teen academy. I think it opens up every year. So if anyone's interested in that, we usually get emails for that.
Do you have to pass like a physical fitness test for the FBI?
Oh yeah, thankfully not me. Just the agents. The agents have to do like a bunch of physical tests, including sit-ups, push-ups, sprinting a mile and a half, pull-ups. Yeah.
Wow.
And they have to pass a test every year too. But it gets easier as you get older.
Any other questions? Is anyone sort of intrigued by any of these professions, or did it kind of open up some thoughts about possible majors that you might be interested in? Trevor's saying maybe. I think, so would you say that you have to be strong in math for these, to consider engineering? It's a really heavy math field, wouldn't you say?
I mean, yeah, to get through the schooling, but I would say being resourceful is probably the biggest skill to have, especially now with like YouTube and Google. You can learn a lot of things on your own. So yeah, um, I've been stumped in a lot of things in school, and being able to just have someone, talk speak in simple terms on YouTube really helps. So I think being able to figure out how to do it from the resources that you have would probably be the biggest skill. So you don't necessarily have to be like a math whiz or things like that. So that's my take on it. So
I think you definitely have to have a basic grasp of math, otherwise it will be a struggle. Um, yeah, that's what I think. But maybe that's just my major. But I think the way you think is also really important. So I think we're both very like logic-y people. So I think that's also something it's like, there are some people that are just more logical and some people that are more like emotional. So I think that the way our personalities are geared very much towards engineering.
yeah, and I kind of touched on it before also. I would encourage you to find jobs early on, because even simple math concepts, like if you do it on the job, if work on a project that requires that and you use it, then that's when you really start to understand it. So a lot of like math concepts that you just learn in theory, when you don't understand how it applies to the real life, it's hard to grasp. But yeah, once you do it for work and you've practiced it, you've done it a couple of times, then it comes easy. So yeah, I would say find opportunities that allow you to learn, and that will definitely make schooling a lot more applicable. Yeah.
Well, they certainly shared a lot of wisdom for you guys, and I hope that there's a few that stuck as far as takeaways. If and so in our discussion question, if you can jot those down, can anyone share? Maybe let's get 3 people sharing, like, what kind of stuck with them as far as things that they said, even if it's not something that, even if you don't think you're going to go into engineering. Is there anything that they said that kind of resonated with you? I think that I see especially Tim as kind of like a good older brother giving good advice to you guys. And I know a lot of us don't have, like, older brothers or dads who are going to be like, do this, do that, make sure you don't, make sure you don't go down this path or this path. And it's very helpful to hear it from someone who's just a few years ahead. So did anything he say kind of stand out, Danny?
Yeah, I think that I really liked what they both said about don't like go to college for something that, or like, wait, I forgot like how they phrased it because it sounded really good how they phrased it. But what they said about the majoring for college and stuff. Because like I was like struggling with that, like that I didn't know what to do because like I had like a couple things that I could have, that I could like go to college for, but then like me and my mom had a very long discussion about it, and she said the same thing, and that just like
That helped confirm what your mom was saying. Basically, don't major in something that's not going to get you a job.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's actually good advice, because when I went to college, my parents were like, study whatever you want. And everyone's like, whatever you're interested in. But yeah, you major in art history, and then what are you going to do? Open an art history shop? I mean, it might have been fun to study for 4 years, but it's not going to get you a job. Or sociology, Anyone else? What your takeaway was from what they said? Jacob said, doing things earlier in life for future job to have more experiences. Yes.
Yeah, even hobbies too, Jacob. Like, building PCs, like even though it might not be your future career, it'll help develop interest within that hobby. So definitely, yeah, pursue it.
Erica, Erica and Zoe, you guys are on the brink of college. Anything that kind of stood out to you guys from what they said?
Yeah, definitely the don't always pursue what you're passionate about because it's unpractical. Because I was really, really thinking about not caring about the job or money aspect because I genuinely just wanted to go to college for this learning something I really wanted to learn. And that just put it into perspective for me that if I was so confident that I could learn that, I can learn it on my own. It doesn't have to be my job, but I can have a future job that's practical.
Yeah, something else, Erica, is you can have a practical major, but make that passion your minor or your double major. If like the tuition's the same, like if the cost doesn't matter, I think that's a nice way to be able to still learn what you're passionate about, but still be able to have the major for a job in the future.
Yeah, and also like, yeah, if you're interested in it, like the way I see it is, yeah, you get yourself a stable career and you can always do that on your free time. Because if you don't have a stable career, you won't even have time for hobbies. You're just trying to make ends meet. So, and yeah, you don't need college to learn different hobbies. There's so many resources online to learn from. So yeah.
Zoe, what about you? You're kind of graduating this year too. Any thoughts?
Probably researching like what you're going into in college, like what that can get you into in future jobs. I didn't really think about that before.
Yeah. And Zoe's like an amazing artist. So that's a little tricky too, because, you know, going into art is there's, you know, I think the job market is varied and limited as far as, you know, what you study and what you can use it for. So I think that's great that you can research that. Logan, what about you? This is your last advisory with us, so I just want to hear anything that you want to share.
Well, I liked all of it because I like engineering and stuff like that. I liked helping my dad with cars that we did. I liked pretty much doing anything hands-on I'll do. So most of it was very cool to listen to.
Yeah, and actually Logan is interested in welding. He has an uncle who's a welder, so he's considering that as well.
Yeah, job prospects are good for welders. So
Well, anyone else? Any of you younger ones feel like you heard some good nuggets? I know when you're in 6th grade or 8th grade, it's a little hard to think too far into the future.
yeah, and I also know that right when you hear something, you haven't, you know, digested it or thought about it yet. So if you guys have questions after this meeting, you can always email them to Teacher Christine and she can pass them on to us. So no worries if you don't have the questions now.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of wish I went into the FBI. I think I looked into a job in the FBI when I was going back into teaching, like maybe 10 years ago. And I think there was like an age limit or you have to go into Virginia for several months for training. Yeah. And that just ruled it out because I was like, I'm married with a family. I can't just take off and do that. And, but I was like, I never thought about that.
Yeah, it's like the biggest discouragement, I think, for people with families. Yeah, that part sucks.
Ellie, you have a question? Oh, I think she froze. Oh, go ahead, Ellie.
Do you see yourself working in these types of fields?
Oh, can you say that last part again?
Oh, do you see yourself working in these types of fields for a while?
Yeah, I can see myself working in this field for a while. It's fun and there's like different ways to go besides just doing the normal analyst job.
Yeah, and for me, I could also see myself in this long term. I have plenty of older coworkers who've worked in the industry for, 30, 40 years. And I would say, at least in defense, there's a great work-life balance, especially with the every other weekend, you get a 3-day weekend. And at least in my field, you don't see the, super long hours of other fields. So I could definitely see longevity in this field. Because I know people who work like 60, 70 hours a week, they get burnt out after a couple of years and they want to change industries. So that's also something to consider.
Nice. Okay, well, we don't want to keep everybody too long, but definitely if you guys have any other questions, you can send them to me and I can send them to Tim and Tiff. Thank you guys so much for sharing. That was just a lot of really great advice. And I hope that it will be helpful for all of the students as they kind of consider what to do with their lives, the big question. All right.
Yeah,
so,
thank you. Thank you all for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you. So you guys can all leave. I just need to talk to Brody real quick. Yeah. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.